Hello and welcome to the NICU Space podcast by Miracle Moon. I'm Dr. Frankie Harrison, a clinical psychologist and NICU parent myself. Through my work as a psychologist and through my own experience of having a baby in neonatal care, I know that the NICU journey can leave a huge emotional impact on parents and families. This podcast is a space where we talk honestly about that experience. We will be exploring the emotional impact of neonatal care, the anxiety, the guilt, the grief, the questions about bonding and identity, the parts of the experience that so many parents carry long after leaving the hospital. Across the series, I'll be speaking with other NICU parents at different stages of their journey, as well as professionals working in the field. We want you to feel seen, understood, and less alone in what you've been through. So whether you are currently sitting beside an incubator, recently home from NICU, years down the line still making sense of it all, or someone supporting a NICU family, you are very welcome here. What you have been through matters, and you do not have to carry it on your own. Before we begin, just a quick note that this podcast is for information and support, but it is not a substitute for individual medical or psychological care. Now, let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the NICU Space podcast. Today I am talking to Dr. Teela Tomassetti. So Teela is a certified Canadian counsellor and perinatal researcher specialising in birth trauma. So Teela is on the podcast today wearing two hats. She's sharing her own experience of her own birth trauma, which she hasn't done in this detail on any other podcast. And she's on talking as a professional too. I've known Teela for a number of years since she started up the Tea on Birth Trauma on her Instagram page, and we have been Instagram friends for a long period of time. So I felt really honoured that she felt able to come onto the podcast and talk in as much detail as she has today about her own birth experience and trauma. And we spoke about the fact that when you are, and you all know, when you come into a space where you talk about what it is that you've been through, we can often do it at this kind of surface level, or we can just reel it off really quickly. And I know I do that. I know that I've done that on podcast episodes where people have just kind of gone, whoa, that was a lot just there, but you kind of reel it off. But today we have intentionally slowed it down today to talk about moments of her birth trauma that felt hard, that felt like they stuck. So please do go gently when you are listening to this episode. So much of what I heard her talking about is sadly so many of the things that I hear in the therapy room too. We speak about birth trauma. We talk about our freeze and our fawn responses, our nervous system reactions that happen. We talk about the impact on partners and vicarious trauma, so the trauma of witnessing trauma. We talk quite a lot about obstetric violence too, which is, again, so important, but maybe tricky for people to listen to as well. But we also talk about how we can reclaim our birth stories. This is such an important episode, and I feel so privileged to have heard this story from Teela. If you feel like you need any support as a result of listening to this episode, if we can help in any way, please do reach out. Go gently with yourself. And here is Teela. Hello, Teela. Welcome to the podcast.
It's so nice to see you.
It's so nice. We were just having a little bit of a chat beforehand, and it's been something that we've been talking about for a long time, trying to get you onto the podcast to talk about your experience, to talk about birth trauma. So I feel really honoured that you are here today.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. And as we were chatting about before, there's parts of what I'm going to share today that make me a bit nervous, but knowing I'm doing it with you, I feel more relaxed about that.
Yeah, completely. I think there's been a long process for you, hasn't there, with your birth trauma where you haven't been able to talk about it. You've not been allowed to talk about it. So being able to voice it on a podcast, particularly before, I guess I've asked you a couple of years ago whether you'd come on and talk to us about your experience, but you weren't actually able to. Yeah. And I know that you've spoken about things like having a lot of issues with your voice and stuff like that. I'm wondering whether there was any kind of somatic link there of not being able to kind of fully tell your story. So it feels like a big deal, you being here.
It is. It is a really big deal. And you're so right. I tie to, like, there were constantly years where, yeah, I would literally lose my voice and not be able to speak. And in our profession, we kind of need our voice. It's really important. But it was so interesting because during the reporting process, so I'm jumping the gun a bit here, but during the reporting process, I continuously had laryngitis for those 3 years. And then, knock on wood, I haven't had it since the reporting process ended 2 years ago. So,
wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, somatic trauma does live in the body, no matter what people are arguing about right now in the psychology community. It does. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Before we kind of jump into your story, can you just do a little bit of an intro of who you are, what you do, and then we can get into a little bit more about your story, if that feels okay?
Absolutely. Yes. My name is Dr. Teela Tomassetti. You can call me Teela or T, as my family and friends call me. And I'm a perinatal researcher and therapist. I'm also the founder of the Reproductive and Perinatal Trauma Center here in Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. And we specialize in areas like birth trauma, which is my specific area of specialty, as well as pregnancy loss, fertility struggles, and then areas like PCOS and endometriosis, IUD trauma, as well as paternal mental health. We're really proud that that's an area that we focus on. And yeah, what else can I tell you about my research? I don't know if we're going to unpack any of it today, but it was on therapist experience with respect to treating birth trauma survivors who had been mistreated by a provider and also engaged in the fawn trauma response. And so I'm very passionate about systemic issues that exist within maternal mental health care. And so outside of being a therapist and researcher, I'm also what's called a trauma-informed care consultant. And so I'm in hospitals all across Canada demanding that we deliver better care to our mums and dads. Yeah, so that's a bit of
so important. And, you know, you were doing so much work in the middle of writing up this huge piece of research and going through something personally yourself. And then you opened this center. So there were so many things that you were doing all at once within that, but all such important work. And I feel like we came to Instagram at around the same kind of time that it all kind of started bubbling up there. So we've been talking online for years, but like I've said, I guess this is the first time that I will be hearing your story, so it feels really important. And we were talking a little bit as well beforehand, weren't we, that sometimes, and I know people will relate to this, sometimes we can do that part of just talking through our story and just talking through it quick, but we've spoken about wanting to kind of slow it down a little bit today, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if, Frank, you've ever experienced someone starting off a podcast in that way, but for your listeners, I really feel like it's important for you to know that I asked Frankie today to slow me down during my story if she notices me rushing, because I really want to be intentional with how I share my story today. And because of everything I went through, it just felt safer to list it like a grocery list rather than an experience. And because of what I went through, I also really had to detach from my story in order to survive those few years. So I'm nervous for today, which is not something I ever experienced on a podcast. I love talking and presenting and all these things, but I feel a bit nervous today in sharing it, but not as nervous again because I know it's with you.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really normal. And I mean, you must get it a lot with clients as well. That first kind of telling of the story for some people, it's just that, like, I just need to get it out. I just need this kind of surface level, out it goes. And for some people, it's like, okay, and then we need to go back and we need to do it in a kind of slower and actually, how was that type thing. So but I completely get it. I do it as well on podcasts, just kind of like reel off everything that happened. And then people go, whoa, that was traumatic. And you're like, can't connect with it too much though. So it's tricky.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about where it starts for you. So where does your story start?
Yeah, so it starts back before I even had birth trauma. My best friend Christina at the time, who is a nurse back in Winnipeg, which is where I'm originally from, she had just given birth to her daughter Lucy. And I went to go visit her, as any good friend does, within that first week of her being home. And the second I walked in, she looked completely different to me.
Mm,
And I don't mean in that like just had a baby way, just something seemed off. And her and I had been friends for years and knew each other inside out. And I asked her like how she was doing. And she gave that typical response of like, oh, I'm doing good. And baby's doing good. And started to focus on Lucy. And I was like, Christina, how are you really doing? Like, how
mm,
was your birth experience? And to me, like, even as I say those words out loud, they're not words we speak enough. It usually
mm,
is the focus is on the baby. We know this so well in our community. But I just, the therapist in me, even at that time, was just like, there's something happening for her. And she broke down and she started to cry. And she just shared parts of her birth story. And as she was saying it, I was feeling like it was traumatic in what she was
mm,
telling me, but she wasn't saying that language. And I remember saying to her, like, I hope it's okay to name it, but this sounds like it was traumatic. And she sobbed even more. And she was like, that's exactly how I feel.
mm.
And she's like, but I don't feel like I can actually say those words because, again, I'm okay right now. Baby's okay. And she's like, I feel like a lot of women go through this and don't actually talk about it. And so
Yeah.
this was literally 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I flagged it in my brain. I never forgot that conversation with her and just how much pain I saw my friend in for a period, like a long period of time. And then at the time, I got to do the math here, but at the time, I feel like I was nearing the end of my master's, but I was still in my master's program. I hadn't started my doctorate. And when I began my doctorate, I said to her, Christina, I want to dedicate my research to you. And she
Mm,
was like, she couldn't believe I even remembered that conversation or that it registered in that way for me. And I said, no, what you said, and especially now after getting pregnant, because I got pregnant a month into starting my doctorate. Go figure. Thanks,
right.
universe.
Wow. Oh my
I was
gosh.
1 month pregnant, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is all going to happen at once for me. Awesome. But I just never forgot it. And when I looked into it after she told me about it, I realized that at the time there wasn't a whole bunch of research on it. Like no one was talking about it as much as they are now.
Okay.
And so I had flagged it in my brain. I had told her that I was going to do that, and then I just tucked it away.
Mm,
I was pregnant. I was focused on my schooling and working full time and doing all the things. And then I encountered my own birth trauma. And so this is the part where I need to slow myself down right now and like really
okay.
run through what I think are key aspects for the people listening and even just for me as I say it out loud.
Yeah.
So my birth was supposed to be a home birth with a midwife team. So
Okay.
at the time, it was 2021. So we'll all remember a little thing called COVID, a pandemic that we were all experiencing. And I had decided on a home birth for a couple different reasons. One was because of COVID. I had a worry that I was like, what if my partner's not allowed in the space? Because that was
Yeah.
happening at that time. And throughout my pregnancy, that was a really unique experience in terms of like Ryan, my husband, wasn't even allowed to come to some of the appointments. And so I
Mm,
thought, okay, if I really want to make sure that I've got some sense of support, then maybe I'll give birth at home. The
yeah.
other piece is that I always wanted a water birth. And now I was thinking about this the other day. Do you remember the TLC's baby story? Do you remember that? Because I feel like
No.
it was not American or Canadian. I feel like it was from the UK actually, because they always had a UK accent. But yeah, okay, so TLC's baby story was basically a documentary way back in the day. Like in the
Yeah.
I want to say it was like the early 90s, where they would follow somebody who was just about to give birth and you would get to see their birth story. It was really cool.
Right.
And I spoke about it in a book I got to write a chapter in where like that was one of my first experiences with childbirth was seeing this beautiful home birth. Like
Mm,
it was spectacular. And I just remember being a little girl sitting there with my mom, turning to her and saying, I want to do that one day.
oh, wow.
Like,
Really?
yeah,
From
yeah.
that age?
Yes, from
Wow.
that age. And then like I was never that. woman though, like in the same breath, like I was never that woman who like really was super hyper focused on kids or like wanting to be a mom. I've always been career driven.
Yeah.
But I just knew I wanted a water birth.
Mm,
And so we decided on these things, and looking back, and I was thinking about this too over the weekend and preparing for this, like I don't think Ryan was really keen on it. I think he
mm,
was really nervous about it. And I remember him saying a couple times, like, what if something happens? And I was like, nothing's going to happen. First of all,
mm,
like, I know people give birth at home all the time. It will be okay. And if worst comes to worst, we go to the hospital. And so I remember reassuring him and then him kind of tucking it away and not bugging me too much about it. But I think he was
mhm.
nervous. And so I will say too that throughout my pregnancy, there was a lot of red flags with my midwife. And I didn't know at this time, and I feel like it's really important for the people listening to understand this.
Okay.
You can fire your provider,
Mhm.
okay? And I had no clue about that while this was all transpiring. I thought,
Okay.
especially because midwifery care is really hard to come by here in Alberta, Canada,
Okay.
I thought that who you got was who you got, and that's it. You just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah.
And so there were some red flags along the lines, just to give one example, is that
Mm,
during the intake process, instead of asking me, are you experiencing domestic violence within your relationship? Okay. So that used to be my area of expertise. I worked in it for years and years. And so I know how to gently ask that question and to probe and those
yeah.
pieces. She made a joke out of it. And she said, so is anybody else kicking you besides your baby?
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's just to give you just a little flavor of what her personality was like.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
she was inappropriate. She was
Yeah.
rude. She had no level of professionalism. And
Okay.
so she was quite dismissive throughout the pregnancy. She'd often minimize me if I asked questions or had concerns. So again, I wish I had known that I could have just let her go and found somebody else. And yes, the journey would have been difficult to do that, but I wish I had known.
Okay.
So, leading up to the birth, so I'll kind of get into the birth story now, is that it was a beautiful day.
Mm,
It was in April, and it was a few days before my actual due date. And
mm,
I was walking outside and I was doing what's called curb stepping. Are you familiar
yes.
with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was at that point of my pregnancy where I was like, it is time to get this baby out.
Okay.
And, and honestly, Frankie, I hadn't tried anything else. It was just curb stepping. And so I did that and I got back to the deck outside in my backyard and I laid down
Mm.
and I heard and felt a pop.
Oh wow.
And I was like, what was that? I was like, no, my water didn't just break. There's no way. So I laid there for another 15 minutes in
Hmm.
denial. Even though I could feel the liquid, I'm like, did I just pee myself? It was just
Oh wow.
so I stood up and it was like in the movies in terms of like a lot of fluid started to
Wow.
come out and
Yeah.
I toddled into the house. And at the time, Ryan was working from home, COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, Ryan, and I'm yelling to him. He's in the basement. He's like, yeah. And I said, I think my water just broke. And he's like, oh my God. And he just immediately was so excited. I remember him running up the stairs. And this is the only video we have. Okay. This is the
Mm-hmm.
only video we have of the entire experience. We took a video
Mm.
and we're selfieing it. I'm selfieing it. And I was like, Livy, because we knew her name. We were the only people to know her gender. No one knew we had found out. We kept it our little secret. So
Okay.
we knew her name was Livy already. And we were like, Livy, oh my goodness, you're on your way. We're so excited. And like, oh, I'm gonna get emotional.
Okay.
I've watched that video like
Yeah.
maybe twice because you just see two people who are so elated and just beaming. And I remember
Yeah.
Ryan, he's such a jokester, like making a joke on the video saying, oh, and thanks for doing it on a Friday. You got me out of work early. Like,
Mm.
so we were just so excited and I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel scared. I was just ready to go.
Mm.
And then a series of really unfortunate events started to unfold in my home. And so my water broke, and I thought it would be like what I had read in books and had learned about, which is that you've got time. That it's just,
Right.
even though you're in labor, go bake a cake. You know how you read those silly
Yeah.
things? It's like you're going to have all this time to go clean the house and get things done. That did not take place with my birth. I was immediately confused as to why things felt so intense. And my
Okay.
pain threshold, I think, is pretty high. I have a ton of tattoos. I experience pain, I think, at a manageable level, but this felt like next level to me.
Yeah.
And so right away, I was like, I felt like things were progressing quickly. And so I reached out to my doula, and she's like, you know what, things like I can tell that I think things are speeding up and I'm going to come over. And she came over and took one look at me. Like I couldn't take a bath. I couldn't do any of the things they say, like go do these
Yeah.
things. I was in immediate discomfort and in a lot of pain. And she said, I think you need to contact the midwife. And so I reached out to the midwife, and right away, it was just the tone she had had throughout the pregnancy. It was very dismissive. It was, I don't know, maybe call me back in a bit. We'll see, kind of thing. And a few minutes later, like Ryan called her back on his own. And he's like, no, like, I think she is in labor and you need to get here. And so he started to advocate for me at the beginning.
Mm.
She shows up and she's right away in this mood. She had just come from a long birth. She was complaining about that. So again, like the lack of professionalism. And immediately I
Yeah.
started to feel guilty that she was even there. And she was making sure that I felt that way by saying things like, yeah, I'm so exhausted. I haven't even slept. This last person, she pushed forever. Like, like, I don't know if I'll stick around for this. I might leave for a bit and get somebody else to come. And she was just right away making me feel guilty for giving
Yeah.
birth.
Yeah.
And I felt that right away. I was just like, okay, like I need to get this baby out. And I remember her saying, I don't really know. I think you're just in early labor. I don't think much is going on. And she checked me and I was already at 6 centimeters dilated.
Gosh.
And
Okay.
I remember the look on her face when she checked me. First of all, I had to like really get her to check me, which I was surprised about. She was just like, no, like I don't think it's happening much. And then she checked and she was like, oh, okay, like things are progressing.
Mm.
And this is where I'll remember certain parts of it. Like, and even when I think about it on my own, or in the little bits that I've tried to share on like social media or even on other people's podcasts, like it becomes blurry. You know this too.
Yeah,
It's
of
like
course.
in through trauma, it's like your brain is going to pick certain parts. But what started to happen was that I don't even know where to begin with this.
That's okay. Take your time.
I'll start with some of the kind of like bizarre things.
Okay.
So, like, she started getting me to drink things without telling me what was in them.
Okay.
Okay. So, this is where the lack of consent and just acknowledgement as a human being, just kind of the basic bare minimum, started to disappear within our conversation or
Right.
like within our experience together. So, she got me to drink something that she was calling dirty water. I
Okay.
I still, to this day, Frankie, do not know what it was. And
Okay.
she was making jokes about it, saying, just take it like it's a shot, like you're at the bar. And so she's like, it's going to help. Just take it.
Is
And
it like
so
medication or
I guess,
you
I
don't
don't know.
know? Okay.
I
Okay.
still to this
Okay.
day don't know. And
Yeah.
I remember she got me to take it twice, and I felt so sick afterwards.
Right.
And I remember throwing up a lot
Oh.
during my contractions and that. And yeah, and I remember that it was blue Gatorade I was drinking. There's certain things that you just never forget. And I remember her making fun of me about how I was pushing. She was making fun of me for throwing up a lot. It just felt like this really, and I'll name it, like a really violent, abusive moment where I felt like I could not do anything right and that I was being judged for how this was all unfolding. And as this started to happen, I watched in real time my doula and my husband just shut down.
Okay.
And so they were really feeling the extent of the abuse as well. And you and I both know that they were engaging in that freeze trauma response.
Right. Okay.
And so it just like I watched them both just kind of go inside of themselves and nobody was helping me.
Yeah.
And so she was injecting me with things without telling me what was in them. So she injected me in my butt with a needle
Oh my
and just
gosh.
said, oh, like this will help. So you'll finally stop throwing up, roll of the eyes kind of thing.
Right.
And one of the things that was most disturbing was what she kept saying to me throughout. And so she would say things to me. And actually, this is where my brain wants to skip past, but it's really important. What she started to do was unconsented cervical checks. And this is
Okay.
by far the most harmful part of my birth trauma experience by a mile.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she not only was doing them unconsented for no reason, okay, so there was no concerns with baby throughout this experience, okay, but even when I begged her, okay, so there was a moment where I was begging her not to, that I was literally in a full-blown contraction
Yeah.
where she not only ignored me, but she held me down
Oof.
underwater. Okay, so she pushed me down and then shoved her entire fist inside of me.
Oh my
All
goodness
was
me.
begging her to please not do that. And for me, it's the sound of the water. It's
Okay.
literally like I can hear in my head, if I close my eyes, I can hear the sound of the water hitting the side of the birthing pool.
Yeah.
And you could not hear anything else.
Yeah.
And I just shut down. And I just remember literally feeling like I was floating above my body
Mm-hmm.
and watching this experience happen. And I remember just tears streaming down my face, but going really quiet. And then that was it for me. Like I had completely given up at that point. I think before that I had found my voice here and there and was trying to advocate for myself or ask for questions, or but it was like the moment that happened, I was done.
Yeah. Fine. It's just that shut down
Yeah.
response at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just survival at that point. It was
Yeah.
just like, how do I get out of this situation? How do I make this end? At that point, too, I will share with you that again, I was pushing so throughout this, and I pushed at home for 4 hours, so stuck at 9.5 centimeters. And what she would say to me, and she said it to me after she did that moment, she would say, "You know, Teela, no one ever said that giving birth was going to be easy."
Oh my goodness.
And so again, I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt so
Yeah.
ashamed. I was doing everything I possibly could. She was doing all these things to me, and still Livy wouldn't come. And I'm getting emotional as I say it because it's like, oddly enough, and I've only talked about this once on my page, I actually give Livy credit. I
Mm.
actually think in my heart, in my soul, that my daughter knew what was happening and what was about to happen to me.
Okay.
And so she wouldn't come out.
Fine.
I
Yeah. I get that.
believe that in my heart and my soul, that my baby stalled, that my kid was like, this is not safe. I'm not coming out. And as the story unfolds, you'll understand why I really feel so passionately about that. So I remember starting to feel really sick, and
Yeah.
I felt like I was running a fever. I wasn't feeling good. And I said to the midwife repeatedly, and she also had a partner there. So I want to also point that out to your
Oh
listeners
my
and to yourself.
goodness.
So there was someone witnessing all of this and not doing anything about it. So I repeatedly said that I wanted to leave. So I said, I want to go to the hospital. I feel like something is wrong with me. I feel
Mm-hmm.
sick. And she said, no, that's not what we're doing here. Your options are to try this position, or your option is to do this, but we're not going to the hospital.
Oh,
And so she literally refused to let me leave my own home. And when I told people that, the couple people that it initially happened to, I knew that it sounded crazy. It sounded like I was being confined in my home.
yes.
And I was.
Did you know that the NICU space is more than just this podcast? We also run an online community created specifically for NICU parents, whether your baby is currently in neonatal care or your NICU experience happened months or even years ago. Inside the community, you'll find specialist guidance from professionals who understand NICU, resources and coping tools to help with the emotional impact, and most importantly, connection with other parents who really get it. For many parents, it becomes a place where they can finally talk about their NICU experience with people who understand without needing an explanation. If this sounds like something that would support you, you can find out more information in the show notes. Let's get back to the episode.
And so this went on for hours in my home. And one of the biggest gaslighting moments to take place was so there was more. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
it's also, I can feel myself like if this feels very intense, this feels hard to share. And so I know that there's parts of skipping past, but these are like the main points, right? It's like injecting me with things, making me drink things, not telling me, unconsented cervical checks, the minimizing, the shaming. So at one point, she literally had sent Ryan and I to my bedroom. So she said, go to your room. Okay. Now, for those of us who have been through childhood abuse, like myself, okay, so I grew up in a home where there was domestic violence. And at this point, I had already shut down that really big moment of sexual violence, because that's what that was, what she did to me.
Yes.
I didn't name it in that way. I just listened. At this point, it was just like I just was like a kid again in my own home, and Ryan was too. And we went to my room. I continued to try and labor. I remember I had a peanut ball in there, and I just remember crying to him and saying, we need to get out of this house. Something is wrong with me. And he was so scared. And I remember him going out and trying to advocate for me in the hallways. They were just sitting on the stairs hanging out. And he was like, something is wrong with my wife. We need to get to the hospital. No, she's fine. Just, this is what labor looks like, just dismissing him. And so he kept shutting down too, because he was trying in moments as well. And so eventually she walks back into the bedroom and she says, what was I want to get the exact words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She goes, okay, that's it. I've had enough. We're going to the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
So I had never even asked her. It was that energy of gaslighting, right? Where it's like, I've been asking for hours. And it was now her idea that we needed to go to the hospital. So I felt a mix of, again, shame and embarrassment and such relief, where it was like, fine. So we got into my car. Frankie, they made us drive on our own. So they said, we'll meet
and you're
you
like
there.
9.5 centimeters dilated.
10. Like, let's be real. Like, I could feel her head. Okay. So we get into my car. It is now, I think, if I'm like timing it right, it's between 12 and 2 in the morning is around this, when this is happening. And my doula says she's not coming. She looks at me and she says, and I have so much to share with you, Frankie. She looks at me as the midwives leave and we're packing up stuff and I'm trying to waddle out the door. She goes to me, I'm not going to come to the hospital. And I said, why? And she said, I don't think they'll let me in there anyways because of COVID. And I said to her, I'm like, Janelle, we know that they're going to, like, I contacted them a couple of weeks ago. We know that they're going to let you in. She's like, oh, I just don't think so. So I'll just stay here and clean up your house and I'll make sure to lock the door. Okay. So now Ryan and I are in the car. It's 1 a.m. We're speeding to the Royal Alex, which is like, every time I go to present there now, Frankie, that's what flashes through my brain is how long it actually takes to get there. So they said the Royal Alex, which here in Alberta is the high risk hospital. So I have a feeling the midwives again knew that this was going to turn south. So we get into the car, we're speeding through, and I remember I couldn't put my seatbelt on and I put it on behind me so that the sound would stop. And I remember just, Ryan, I need you to speed through every light. Just please get me there. And he did. We sped to the Alex, which usually from my house takes about 25 minutes, sometimes half an hour. We got there in like 15 minutes. So we get there, and long story short, because this part isn't as significant to me, is that I labored there for a while with them. Okay. And I started to fawn. I started to say things to her like, I think, you know what, I can tell you're so tired. I'm so sorry this is taking so long. Do you want to go to your car and sleep? And it was a big part of my therapy that I had to process because I felt so much shame over this moment of fawning where I was taking care of her instead of her taking care of me. And it's honestly what inspired my research. And so she went to the car and I got the other midwife for a bit and it gave me a bit of time. So it's so smart. Look back and like, wow, what a smart coping strategy my nervous system engaged in order for me to be able to navigate this. So I'm still, at this point, I have an epidural. So they gave me an epidural. So those of you too who hear sometimes, oh, it's too late. Like I was literally about to give birth and they still gave me one. Okay. So I get the epidural. Now I'm in this like heavy drug state I was drugged too intensely for what was about to happen. All of the sudden, and I still to this day don't know how this unfolded, the room flooded with medical staff.
Okay.
Okay, so all of a sudden this doctor was in. I had no idea. All these nurses showed up, and this doctor walks up to me. His name is Dr. Billy Wong. I always shout him out on podcasts and
Okay.
presentations. He walked up to me and he introduced himself very calmly, and he said, Teela, I'm worried about you. He said, I think you've been laboring too long. And
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is that your water broke some time ago, and I'm worried that you have an infection and that you're running a fever right now. And I was like, oh, just so relieved. Someone finally believed me that I wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
So I actually think, because I remember nurses kind of coming in and out of the space. I think nurses caught wind and told the doctors what was going on. So all of a sudden, Dr. Wong says to me, Teela, you got a couple options here. So he did a brilliant job, truly. I use him as
Mm-hmm.
an example all the time for consent. He said, you got a couple options here. I am worried about you. I'm not worried about your baby yet, but I'm worried about you. He said, move to an emergency cesarean and get baby out, or we can try an episiotomy and forceps, and I can try to deliver her right now. But listen, I'm only going to give you 3 pushes because I'm really worried about you. And
Okay.
I said, I had not even heard of an episiotomy or forceps. So
Okay.
I remember looking at my midwife and saying, what am I supposed to do? And she rolled her eyes at me and said, he already explained it, and walked away from me. So
Oh.
I'm lost, and I'm looking at Ryan. I'm like, what do we do here? I don't know what to do. And he said, I'll give you guys a minute to talk about it. And then in the end, I was like, well, I want to try and get her out. I know I'm so close. And then sure enough, so I agreed to the forceps and episiotomy.
Mm-hmm.
And on the second push, I got her out. Okay. And I remember the sound of her crying, and I remember her being placed on my chest, and how, like, immediately when she connected to my chest, she stopped crying. I remember that moment so distinctly. And then everything started to go south. So it was like, and I didn't realize, because as a first time mom, never going through this experience, I had no idea I was hemorrhaging. I had no
Right.
clue. And I felt like I was literally going through 2 worlds. Like, everything was starting to feel really dark and dim. I could feel
Mm-hmm.
her and sense her, but then it was like the room was like going somewhere else, is like the best way to describe it. And I remember the look of fear on Ryan's face and realizing that things were not good. And it was like this quiet hustle bustle in the room. And I remember the doctor saying, like, she's losing too much blood. And I just like, and it was just like hustle, hustle. It was just like everyone was working so fast. And then I started throwing up and throwing up. And I remember I was so scared to drop Livy that I handed her to Ryan. And I was like, you need to take her. I'm going to drop her. And I remember a nurse giving me a dirty look for it too. I remember her like shooting me a look. And I was like, I'm going to drop her. And I was like shaking. I was convulsing, and I couldn't
Yeah.
stop throwing up. And so this part I can skip past pretty easily, because oddly enough, it's not the most traumatic part for me, is
Yeah.
that
And that's saying something, right?
I almost died from an excessive hemorrhage. I
Yeah.
lost liters of my blood. I needed transfusions. I spent a week in the hospital. And then 6 weeks later, I hemorrhaged again due to a retained placenta, and required a DNC to remove that retained placenta.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
in this part, I'm like, I can so easily skip past, even though it left me with so many long-term impacts. And don't get me wrong, it was traumatic too, but it's like, it's not the hardest part for me personally about my story. It was not almost dying. It was how
Mm.
I was treated.
Oh my
Sorry,
goodness,
it took
Teela.
too long.
No, not at all. I think just kind of slowing it down again in terms of what's going on through my head is how much, so much of your, like, I think when people talk about birth trauma, but I don't think there's like a seriousness about it sometimes. You can just go birth trauma, it can kind of be banded around. But I think when you actually name what you experienced there as abuse, like
Yeah.
physical, emotional, like so many things about that, it was abuse that you experienced within that. It's so heavy, especially given what you said about having those layers of trauma from your
Mhm.
past on top of it as well. And I'm just so sorry that you went through that. Like, it's not okay. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who sadly relate to so many of those things. And
Yeah.
I think that there is also a bit of a narrative around the fact that the staff are trying their best. There are always good intentions trying their best. But in this, that was a direct failing. That was direct abuse from that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does it feel for you having said it and having spoken through it?
I think it feels, there's just so many mixed feelings. It feels, and I don't know if there's any words to describe it because I want to say like it feels good. And it's like, but it doesn't. Like it doesn't
No,
feel
sure.
good to say it out loud. But what feels okay to me about it or good about it is knowing again that it's going to support other people listening. That I
Yeah.
know I'm not, sadly, like we're saying, I know I'm not alone in my experience in terms of the provider mistreatment, the violence part of birth trauma. And it just feels like just such grief. It's just,
Yeah.
that's not how any of this was supposed to unfold.
No.
And
No.
my life would have looked so different
Mm,
had just like the simplest of things taken place
mm.
throughout my birth experience.
Yeah.
But it's the long term impacts. I really don't, I still to this day don't feel like we talk about them enough in our community. Like the long term impacts of that were tremendous for me, you
Mm,
know? Like, and I'm going to be completely honest here with you because, and I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast, but I know I'm not alone in it. And I think it needs to be said is that it took me over a year to be intimate with my partner after that.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
anytime he came near me in that way, I did not want to be touched.
Yeah.
Right? It was flashbacks, it was nightmares, it was feeling so disconnected and unsafe in my body,
Yeah.
and that destroyed parts of our marriage. It did. And
Yeah.
he was so understanding and loving and all the things, and he still is to this day. And it's that still impacted us,
Of course it did.
and
You know?
like I didn't go to doctor's appointments like I was supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a history of having cervical cancer cells, and I was refusing to go for my PAPs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there are like significant long-term impacts and consequences as a result of these experiences.
Yeah.
Like that's my health. And my
Yeah.
health was being ignored afterwards because I was too scared to have a provider touch me.
Yeah. And it's even that kind of non-sexual touch as well, like just
Mhm.
having that kind of that intimacy at a kind of lesser level as well, like for some people can just be so incredibly triggering that it might lead to that. And it's not a conscious rational thing, is it? You can't say to yourself like, this is my husband who I love. It's like your nervous system is reacting in that kind of way of, this
Absolutely.
is not safe, this touch is not
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not a choice. And
No.
that's why I'm so passionate about talking about the nervous system with birth trauma and educating people on trauma responses is because we carry so much shame and guilt over how we're responding during and after. And it's like, no, like our nervous systems really are just doing their best to help us survive these moments.
Mm.
But we don't often realize that.
I wonder if this feels okay, because you said about your your doula and your partner going into that freeze response in that moment. How, throughout your experience, what have you felt about that?
Oh, that's such a great question.
Mm.
I've gone through so many roller coaster waves of emotion with this. I I felt so betrayed by my doula.
Yeah.
I really did. I hired her thinking that that would be her role, like in terms of advocacy, support, being that kind of constant there. That's the idea that we have about what doulas are like. And I just went through it afterwards because I'll say that one of the things I'm really grateful to her about after that is like she apologized profusely, like she did, and I fawned and was like, I understand why you did that. Like that's the freeze trauma response. Like again at that point I was already highly educated in trauma work and was able to even name that for her and give her permission to not feel as bad for how it had happened. So there I was reassuring her when inside I felt wrecked by it and destroyed.
Yeah.
And what I'm grateful to her for was that she documented everything, even though I didn't ask her.
Okay.
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 So she saw, as anyone
Yeah.
would, even from miles away, how significant everything that, like, that it was pure violence. And so she literally had timelined it. So when I went to make that report to the College of Alberta Midwives, she had it already ready to go. And she
Wow.
was the one to first say to me, you might want to think about reporting what happened to you. And I
Okay.
didn't know, again, that I could. Silly me, worked in sexual assault for years, domestic violence for years, worked with police for years, and yet didn't even think, oh yeah, I should be reporting this. And it was also Dr. Billy Wong who said, you might want to look into how this all unfolded for yourself. And he was actually one of the first people to name it as birth trauma to me too. I'm very grateful to him for a lot of things. But going back to Janelle and Ryan is that, yeah, I think the most betrayed by her. I think I could tell Ryan was doing his best, and that he was up against a lot in those moments. And I know we're going to talk about partners if we have time, because now this is in it. But yeah, I just felt really upset with her and let down, betrayed. Those are some of the words that come to me. And yeah, just abandoned, just straight up
Yeah.
abandoned. And she said, and she admitted to me in the days and even weeks and months to come, that she was horrified. So she went into therapy about, and this is hard to hear, okay? She went into therapy about my experience for years.
Wow.
It stuck with her that much, and
Gosh.
she doesn't do doula work anymore.
Wow.
So it
Gosh.
was that bad. And so
Yeah.
that's validating for me. Like when I hear that, it was validating, but it also felt like, whoa, because she had been a doula for 5 years at the time. So it's not like
Um,
she was an inexperienced doula.
yeah.
And so, yeah, so I feel even still to this day a little mixed about it. There's part of me that just manages that guilt piece of like, oh, I ended her career, or like she felt like she couldn't carry on because of what she saw. And then I feel anger and sadness about it as well.
Mm,
Yeah.
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 And
And then
you're
it's just a
you're
deep
gone.
understanding. Yeah.
Completely. And it will be that, won't it? It will be layers of it, and it'll oscillate between all of those different feelings, all at different points within that. The You said with Ryan, it feels like it was he was trying his best
Yeah.
within that moment. You can understand that for
Yeah.
him in that moment. Yeah.
And I think that he couldn't. And like that he for months to come, and like, let's be real, honestly, like for years to come, couldn't forgive himself.
Right.
He really feels like he let me down, and
Yeah.
that he could have and should have done more. And he felt really powerless and helpless in those moments. And this is my language that
Yeah.
I'm using because I can identify clearly what was happening to him. But yeah, I think he feels a lot of remorse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you speak a lot about that impact on the partner
I do.
in what you do, and in, like you said, in the center that you run and all of that kind of stuff. Can you talk me through a little bit about either what you've seen for Ryan, if that feels okay, or generally what you've seen in terms of how it
Mhm.
impacts the partner, and why is it important to be talking about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So for Ryan, when this first happened, I think he was very much in a state of shock.
Mm,
And in kind of that tug of war that we experience as survivors, where he was so grateful, right? He was so grateful that I was alive, that Livy was alive, and to be home when we finally got home. And also like his own memories and flashbacks of that. And I didn't know he was going through this at first. And
mm,
so it was, for me, it was, I want to say like around a month in. I remember checking on him like throughout that first month and saying like, are you okay? Like that was really serious, and like trying to help him name it. And he was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. And it was a lot of brushing off, and like I could tell trying to like be strong for us. And plus that
yeah.
first month was just a whirlwind where you're just like, whether
Looking
there's
after a
birth trauma
newborn
or
as
not,
well,
it is,
completely. Yeah.
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 And so I think we were all just in survival mode. And I just remember, and this happens a lot for men in general when it comes to paternal mental health. Okay. So whether it's birth trauma, anxiety, or depression, how it usually shows up is anger.
Mm.
Okay, so it's irritation, it's frustration, being impatient, and kind of, or even explosive. That anger energy is what comes forward because it feels safer for, I think, a lot of males' nervous system to engage in that action energy rather than like a more heart centered kind of feeling energy, a
Mm.
tender, like softer one. And so I just remember him having moments of like little outbursts.
Mm.
And then I just named it for him. And I
Mm.
said, are you dealing with trauma here? You're really appearing anxious to me. And again, to have a therapist partner, like it becomes
Yeah.
easier to have those conversations. And I said, like, I'm actually worried about you. You witnessed a lot, and are you okay? And I need you to tell me what's really happening for you. And he just broke down and he cried, like really cried since the first time. And just, yeah, he said, I was so scared you were going to die. And no one was
Okay.
telling me what was going on. And I didn't know if you were going to die or if there was something wrong with Livy. And I thought I was going to lose both of you. And just no one was telling me.
Mm.
And I just never forgot that moment with him. And it
No.
rings true for every male I sit across from in my therapy space. That's so often the narrative. If like I didn't know what was happening and no one
Mm.
was telling me. And so then they're left to come up with their own answers
Yeah.
and there's no way of saving you, right? Like they can't really step in. And our medical system, whether it's midwives or doctors, are not set up in that way. They're not collaborative. They're not like, come on in, let me tell you what's going on and like how you can help or like,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so I just feel passionate about it because why shouldn't we? That's always my
Mm.
argument. Why shouldn't we be passionate about the partner's experience? This is my best friend. This is the
Mm.
person that I decided was worthy enough to be a father to my children. Why wouldn't I advocate for that? Why
Mm.
wouldn't I create space to talk about it? And so I think we need to normalize that it shouldn't be an abnormal conversation, but just an easy one to have. So the analogy I like to use with men and with people when I'm talking about partners' experiences is that when you get into a car accident, okay, they say that the body feels more of an impact, so physically, emotionally, and mentally, if you see it coming. Okay.
Yes.
So if you're
Yeah.
just driving and boom, you get hit by that car, the
Yeah.
impact emotionally, physically, and mentally is less than the person who sees it coming under the corner of their eye. That person is the partner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the partner is in this perfect bird's eye view of seeing the entire scene unfolding before their eyes and
Mm.
literally cannot do anything about it. Now, providers are in the same shoes in terms of they're watching it all. So that's why I deal a lot with vicarious trauma. I'm very passionate about supporting providers with that. But here's the difference. They've got all this training.
Yes.
Okay, they do. They have all this training. They know they're getting into these situations. A partner doesn't. And so
Mm.
I'm just so glad that the DSM-5 finally caught up and now includes witnessing trauma as like a factor that could create PTSD in somebody. Because again, that's the partner witnessing everything taking place.
It's it's so important. And I think that helplessness, that powerlessness, or like wanting to do, wanting to help is so often the thing that
Mhm.
sticks around. So I guess I I think it makes sense that sometimes anger comes as a result of that because it's like I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to feel
Yeah,
that helplessness again. So that kind of anger comes in as a kind of step in if that feeling ever comes up again, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm just aware that there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk to you about because I think that I mean, there's so much I would love to talk to you forever.
I'll come back, Frankie.
Yes, please. So what I really wanted to talk to you about was about the narrative therapy side of stuff, because that is something that I don't think you see that often. And I remember you running something a few years ago, I think, about kind of writing your birth story or rewriting your birth story and talking about narrative therapy within that. And I would just love you to talk us through narrative therapy and how you use it and how it helps people.
Yes. Okay. So now you got to see this intense side to me. Now you're going to get to see me all in smiles
Mm-hmm.
because I just love narrative therapy. Yeah. Okay. So the workshop you're talking about, I was thinking about
Yeah.
it the other day with your question. I was so excited to see that on your list of questions was this because no one's ever asked me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my very first workshop I ever created.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
yeah, and it was called
Yeah.
Reclaiming Your Story After Birth Trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
And I utilize all these narrative techniques that I know about and am passionate about to help people to reclaim and feel really empowered about what they went through. And not in a toxic positivity way, because we don't like
Yeah.
that in the community, but in a way that just feels so powerful for them. And so, yeah, narrative therapy, I didn't realize that my entire career I was engaging in it until
Okay.
somebody named it for me. And so sadly, it's not one of those therapies that we're really taught about in our master's or our
Mm.
doctorate. If it's mentioned, it's like a sentence and then we carry on, and it's really unfortunate. And so when right before I got pregnant, I was working at the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, and we were doing this group consult with a bunch of my colleagues, and one of them named narrative therapy and was saying how they were like navigating it with a client, and I was like, whoa, okay, what is that? What kind of therapy? And so she gave it to me in a nutshell, and I was like, oh my God, there's a name for like who I am as a therapist. And
Okay.
so immediately, and Frankie, I think you're gonna, if you do the training,
Yeah.
I think you feel this very similar to me, because I think we have similar belief systems on how to treat people and how to support them. And so I looked into the training in Vancouver. So they do this really extensive training in Canada, and hopped on a plane and went to do this training. So again, this was before I was pregnant.
Uh-huh.
And I loved it so much that I even got a little tattoo on my wrist. So it's of mountains. Okay. And I did it
Oh,
literally on my lunch break during the training. I was like, I need some kind of tattoo to remember
wow.
this. It was that profound to me. So it was okay. So narrative therapy is essentially, their motto is the problem is the problem. The person is not the problem. Okay.
Okay.
So, what we've done for centuries when it comes to mental health is that we pathologize. Okay. We make the person the problem and the issue
Uh-huh.
that needs to be solved. So, one of the ways I phrase it to people is like, you're not a problem for me to solve.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So, what it does is that it essentially kind of, the thing that we're managing and dealing with, the anxiety, the depression, the birth trauma. So that's literally narrative therapy language. See how I'm saying the instead of
Right.
my birth trauma, the birth trauma. So what it does is that it uses something called externalization. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So it pulls apart the person from the problem so that they're able to reclaim who they really truly are aside from this thing, that this thing no longer defines them or their experiences in life, both past, present, and future, but instead they're back in the driver's seat. And so narrative therapy, in my humble opinion, has to lead some of the work that we're doing in maternal mental health. And the reason I say that is because it's also super passionate about dismantling systems, about challenging societal norms and narratives that we have about being a mom. Okay.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
one of the things I love about narrative is this idea of like how we're supposed to, how birth is supposed to unfold, how we're supposed to parent. It starts to question that. And it says, is
Mm.
this really the truth? And is this something that works for you within your own story? And if it's not, again, how do we reauthor that in a way that works for you? So there's a lot of really powerful techniques within it. And yeah, a lot of a social justice lens to it too. And I joke
Okay.
with people that I might have my doctorate in psychology, but I'm truly a sociologist at heart,
Uh-huh.
because there's so much about within culture and society that impacts how we view ourselves.
Mm.
And so, why aren't we talking more about that, right? That it's not just the person's responsibility, it's
Yeah.
society's responsibility on how we're holding mums and dads after childbirth. So, yeah, that's like in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, completely. And I mean, there were parts that I did in pediatric work, but it wasn't as in depth in any kind of way to do the training. But absolutely agree with you that it feels incredibly powerful. I think anything with that kind of externalization, there's loads of different therapy models that do that externalization, but I just find that so beneficial. as a kind of like, it's a separate from you. You're able to kind of look at it a little bit more rather than it like, you know, an act, they talk about it hooking onto you and all of those kinds of things, right? So I wonder whether, is there anything that you could share for people as like a tangible, anything that they could do in thinking about this for themselves?
Yes. So one of the neat things about narrative therapy is that it really kind of channels our inner kid, because narrative therapy is actually really playful and it's fun and it uses our imagination. And so therapy doesn't have to be this really dark, gloomy place where all you do is cry. There can be laughter and joy within it. And again, I think that's sometimes really empowering for people. So one of the things that you can do is to really start to imagine the birth trauma. So imagine it as a shape or as a character or as something you've seen in a movie. Really start to imagine it as something you can almost hold in the palm of your hand or something that sits next to you, and start to develop everything about it. So the way it looks, it walks, it talks, manipulation tactics that it has, how it tries to convince you to feel guilt or shame, but really start to develop it almost as like a character outside of you. To give you examples, like I had one male that I worked with that viewed it as Mike Wazowski from Monsters, Inc. Like that just worked.
Yeah.
Every time I think about it, that's what I see. I had a woman really saw it as like the sad dog that followed her around everywhere. Somebody else, it was like this big brick wall in front of them. But the moment again that we start to see it as something outside of ourselves, it starts to lose power. It really does. And we start to be able to examine it in ways that just feels more healing for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And we talk about it quite a lot. I guess that kind of inside out Pixar bit made that more accessible for people, but I guess it's just including that, the birth trauma, as one of those characters almost, and being able to interview it. And that completely. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. If people want to know more about what you're doing, how you help people, more maybe about your podcast coming up, where can they find you? Where's best to find you?
Instagram would be best. So the tea, so like the tea you drink, the tea on birth trauma. And then I also run the reproductive perinatal trauma centers one, what is it? Perinatal trauma practice, I think is the name of that one. So you can find me there. If you Google my name, you'll find me as well. And the reproductive and perinatal trauma center, my website.
Okay.
I'm really accessible. I really am that person when survivors reach out to me or providers with questions or needing psychoed or just someone to hear their story. You really can reach out to me. I'm an open door in that sense. So please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Honestly, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I know that wasn't easy talking about that. I hope it was okay for you to do that. That you are a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I can definitely echo what you said. You're always someone who you can reach out to. And I'm sorry for what you have gone through, but I am so glad of what you have created as a result of it.
Thank you, Frankie.
Thank you so much for listening to the NICU Space podcast by Miracle Moon. If this episode resonated with you, please know that support is available and you are always welcome in our community. If you found this episode helpful, one of the best ways to support the podcast is by sharing it, leaving a rating, or subscribing. It helps these conversations reach more NICU parents who really need them. You can also find us on Instagram and across social media at Miracle Moon UK, or explore more resources at miraclemoon.co.uk. Wherever you are in your NICU story, please remember this: you are not alone.